I didn't make any videos for Pride Month last year, and that was largely to do with how busy I was at that point. I mean, I had Edinburgh Film Festival going on, plus I was going to Pride events in real life, and on top of that, I hadn't really gone into any sexuality stuff on this channel in general. This year, I'm doing it different. Over the course of June, I plan on releasing a few LGBTQ+ themed videos. And with a channel so heavily based around film, what better place to start than representation in media? Over the past few years, Hollywood has started to actually feel a lot more inclusive towards the LGBTQ+ community, but there's still a little bit of a way to go, and a lot of films just don't get it right. So I decided I was going to give Hollywood a bit of a helping hand. So, in my own very little Dear Hollywood, these are the do's and don'ts for LGBTQ+ representation. First off, do include it. Despite what some people seem to think, having LGBTQ+ characters does not mean you are forcing it. A character who isn't straight is about as forced as a character who is straight. Don't shy away from representation because you're worried you're going to lose some homophobic viewers. Write characters how you want to write them, not how other people want you to write them. Don't force LGBTQ+ characters in for woke points. I'm talking to mostly you, Disney. If in the marketing of your movie you're going to try and make a big thing out of the character being gay, then actually have some balls and have them be gay. This seems to be a problem that mostly just happens with Disney. In the marketing for Beauty and the Beast, they made a very big thing of LeFou now being a gay Disney character, and it was going to be this big revolutionary huge thing, except for the fact that it wasn't. It's literally just a couple of shots of Josh Gad being into Gaston and other men, but very subtly, and they don't make a very big thing out of it. Here's a rule of thumb. If you can cut it out for China and Russia and the film is unchanged, then it's not revolutionary representation. Do normalize LGBTQ+ people. There's a strange stigma around LGBTQ+ characters where people think if you include them, you have to have a movie about their struggle, but that's not always the case. They can just be people. There's a gay couple in Alien Covenant that you probably didn't notice because more effort was put into making them characters than making them staples. Whether you choose to not acknowledge the sexuality as a big thing or to acknowledge it, their arc doesn't have to be about it. Now that being said, if you choose to cover LGBTQ+ issues, don't sugarcoat it. Now of course, if your target audience is a younger demographic, then feel free to simplify it, but don't take away the weight of an issue that's actually this serious. There are people all over the world going through these issues, and if your film's trying to give them any hope, making light of their issue is not going to help. I mean, yeah, don't remind people of their repressed traumas or anything, but you might want to try and go for a more realistic approach. That being said, do keep your tone in mind. As I was saying, you should treat these issues seriously, but don't shy away from having any fun at all. I mean, yeah, you can have a 100% serious movie and it will still work, but don't let that influence whether or not you have any joy in your film at all. The Miseducation of Cameron Post is a film that is absolutely heart-wrenching, and it follows a teenager as she goes through conversion therapy. It's an absolutely fantastic movie, and I've always admired how real it is with its issues, but I also really enjoy that it actually has humor in it and isn't just completely soul-crushing. Don't erase history. If you're making a biopic about someone who was LGBTQ+, then erasing and downplaying their sexuality is one of the worst things you can do. The prime example of this would be Bohemian Rhapsody, the biopic made about Freddie Mercury back in 2018. Now, when I originally covered this movie, I never quite went into the sexuality stuff, because again, I didn't really talk about that kind of thing at the time on my channel. But when it comes to portraying Freddie Mercury's bisexuality, I don't think they could have done a worse job if they tried. The same goes for the way they represented and covered the AIDS crisis. If you want to make a biopic of this variety, then steer away from Bohemian Rhapsody and aim more for Battle of the Sexes and Rocketman. Whilst both of these movies are good, I don't think either of them are perfect, but at the very least I can say they are both much better at being accurate to the person they're depicting. Do give the characters flaws. This should be a basic character writing rule as is, but since a lot of people seem to think that you shouldn't give these kinds of characters flaws, that is not at all true. Giving a character flaws means that they feel more real and they have more personality and they're easier to relate to in a sense. Whereas if you don't give your characters any flaws whatsoever, then they're just going to be soulless and impossible to care about. There are some movies that do this very well, like the very criminally overlooked one I'm showing on screen right now, but a lot of films don't seem to get this, so yeah, I'm including this here anyway. Make sure your characters are more than just voids of personality. Don't rely purely on stereotypes. Stereotypes exist for a reason. There are people like the stereotypes we see in movies in the world, but a lot of stereotypes are now extremely dated and inaccurate, and some are just outright offensive. Now, if you play your cards right, stereotypes can actually work. In Clueless, having Christian be a gay stereotype actually works because it shows Cher's lack of awareness. In Mean Girls, having Damien be a gay stereotype works because that film is exaggerating all the stereotypes. However, in most other cases, stereotyping just doesn't work at all. In the recent Isn't It Romantic, there's a gay stereotype which is there just to show how toxic and stupid the stereotype is, but the film is a satire of 90s and noughties rom-coms, so it's weird that the stereotype is still accurate to how it's portrayed today. Screenwriters should be making characters first and relying on tropes like Seventh. Do your research. Yeah, I know I'm cheating with this one a little bit. I don't think this one really needs much explaining, just do your research so you don't fuck up and do something stupid or offensive. This particularly applies if you're doing something about an LGBTQ+ struggle or you're doing a coming-of-age movie. The former because you're going to want to be as accurate as possible as you can be to the struggle, and the latter because you're going to want to perfectly capture the feeling of a teenager who is just coming to terms with their sexuality. Don't generalize, demonize, or fetishize. You know, this is something that should go without saying, but unfortunately to some people it doesn't. Don't treat members of the community as if they are just the same person because they are members of the community. Don't act as if LGBTQ+ people are awful people because they are LGBTQ+. Don't make the cinematic equivalent of a stereotypical straight guy watching lesbian porn. Quite frankly, if you were close to doing any of these things anyway, then you probably just shouldn't be writing this kind of movie in general, because it is clear you have absolutely no fucking idea what you're doing. And finally, do hire LGBTQ+ people. You would honestly be surprised by just how many LGBTQ+ properties don't actually do this. And it's not even just actors, just start hiring more LGBTQ+ directors and writers and any job you can. Believe it or not, it is not actually that hard to find trans actors that are good. Sam Levinson is currently 2 for 2 for finding great transgender actresses that you can probably cast instead of Scarlett Johansson. You would think more people would want more authentic and accurate performances, but in a lot of cases it's just stunt casting. And yeah, I will give credit where credit is due and say that some of the performances are great enough that they can be worth it. But honestly, we need more representation not just in characters, but in performers and writers and directors. And again, if you're struggling to find actors of this branch, Sam Levinson is currently finding plenty of fantastic actors, so just go ask him for a couple recommendations. Even outside of Hunter Schafer and Hari Nef, there are so many talented actors and actresses that you are just ignoring. In conclusion, Hollywood, please, represent us as a community through more than just characters. Represent us as people. Represent us as opportunities. The LGBTQ+ community is more than just a marketing ploy. There are stories to be told there. And I'm not just saying never cast straight actors, because obviously, cast anyone you want. But overall, there is still a way to go with representation, and hopefully with the do's and don'ts in this video, we can get there. That's the end of this video. Like, share, subscribe, and bad at outros, and I'll see you in whatever I do next.